Nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday. And right now, you can get 2 lemon pepper wings per person. Subscribe to the Falcons Bird Bag by Point Game Official.
I'm Falcon, and if we lose, I'm still popping shit. Oh, God.
What's going on, family? It's your boy, Simo the C. Mitchell. Tune into another episode of the Falcons Bird Bag. Shout out to our loyal subscribers and fans, everybody who loves what we're doing. Hit that like and subscribe button. Tap in the comments below and let us know what you think about the topics we have at hand. Falcons just lost their recent preseason game. There are a couple of takeaways, which I'll get into in a second. But first and foremost, shout out to the Jaguars. I'm not talking about Jacksonville. I'm talking about the Stevenson High School football Jaguars. Starting off the season 2-0, smacking Arabian Mountain in the mouth. Really love what Coach Jux and that whole coaching staff is doing, and one of the best coaching staffs and defensive coordinators in all of high school football. Like what they're doing at their program, hit up their booster club and give to and support that program. So the Falcons lost their last preseason game, going 0-3 in the preseason. And like I told you guys before, I don't think that you should trip a lot on that. But there were a few takeaways from the game, one of them being the bright spot of Chris Blair. This is a guy who showed up a lot in all the preseason games, and he did a lot to make the roster. I'd be surprised if the Falcons just let him walk or kept him on the practice squad for somebody else to potentially sign. I believe that with some of the recent injuries and some of the recent roster cuts, which we'll get to here in a second, Chris Blair is a guy that come week 1 will probably have a roster spot. And I believe he could be a special teams guy for them as well, too. I'm not sure if he does anything on special teams. And as of right now, the Falcons have essentially 5 receivers that we know are going to be there in the mix. But I do think that there's a world where we see Jamal Agnew actually not be able to make the roster, or at least start the season on IR. He hasn't done a whole lot of practicing right now so far because he's been injured, and we don't know what the status of that is. Also, we saw Morgan Fox playing deeper into the game in the preseason, which indicates that the player's probably not going to make the team, and as we saw, he did get cut. D. Alfred's also a guy that we saw playing a large majority of the game as well, while Billy Bowman didn't even dress for the game. I think that Billy Bowman pretty much has a lock on that position, but I think that D. Alfred might actually be in danger of losing his job. We got more updates about Kaleb McGary. It looks like he's going to start the season on the IR, meaning he's going to miss the first 4 games. A lot of information is unfolding as it goes with this, and before the game, I actually reached out to a physical trainer who specializes in sports injury and is a former NFL football player as well, to talk a little bit more about Kaleb McGary's injury and some of the other injuries that we've had on the team, which I will release as a separate episode. But depending on the second opinions that Kaleb McGary is looking for, that could have a large bearing on some of the roster moves moving forward, some of the guys they keep on the roster. Yesterday, there was an update from Bro Talk saying that Kaleb McGary is leaning toward getting a surgery, which probably could end his season. The word is that Kaleb McGary's knee injury is an ongoing thing that he's had going on since high school, so we really don't know what's going to happen with that. But I decided to reach out to the homie Bert with the 95 Sports Show, who also works at Bleacher Report, because him and Bro Talk do a podcast together as well. Wanted to get his thoughts. And before the 12 roster cuts that recently happened, Bert told me that he thought Morgan Fox was a guy that he thought was going to get cut, and that happened before I could even edit the episode. We also talked about the Falcons linebacker core. We both agreed that we liked Josh Woods, but before we knew it, Caleb Johnson was cut at the linebacker position. The Falcons also cut 2 wide receivers, which I'm not surprised, narrowing down the receiver room. And they got rid of cornerback Lamar Jackson as well, which I'm also not surprised about. But we're going to hop into the interview that I did with Bert, get his thoughts on some of the roster moves and some of the players that he thinks that we could go after to replace Kaleb McGary, since he's probably going to be out for some extended time. First, let me know in the comments below what you think the Falcons should do to replace Kaleb McGary.
Of Parker, Wilkerson, and Nelson could help fill the void of McGary. There's no way. There is no way that can even happen. You know the Falcons run exclusively to the right side with the tandem of Lindstrom and McGary. So where do they think that Parker, Wilkerson, or Nelson can fit the bill if their showing has been poor in the preseason? Jack Nelson doesn't look like a competent right tackle at all. And Parker, forget about it, man. He doesn't have the athleticism nor the footwork to even keep up with these speed rushes that are going to come from the blind side now. So I think Atlanta, what they need to do is they need to, bite the bullet, pony up, and go get a high-profile right tackle to help the offense stay in sync, because these guys are not going to hold that. They're not going to keep up. They're not going to be able to keep up. People mentioned Elijah Wilkerson. Yeah, sure. He played right tackle. He played in 2 separate years at that position for the Denver Broncos. I think in 2019 he filled in for 12 games, and 2020 he filled in for, I think, 7 games. And then they hang this over your head like, oh, the Broncos had 1,000-yard rushers in both of those years while he was on the O-line. Yeah, but that's a different system. And that's a different overall, running schematic. So it doesn't mean that you can plug him in and the same things are going to happen. That's, 5 and 6 years removed from those respected years. And Wilkerson's not the player that he's been. He's bounced around ever since, being as a guard and then kicking out to tackle when needed. He can't be a serviceable full-time right tackle. So I think Atlanta's best bet, bite the bullet, go. You got to go and trade for somebody, because I doubt players or teams are going to release any of their backups at those premium positions, left or right, where Atlanta can possibly scoop one of them up. And to be honest, too, it makes better sense to poach somebody that knows the system, or a tackle that has been in the system, through Minnesota, through the Rams, Vikings, you name it, that can fit the bill for Atlanta at that right side.
Heard them mention the name Wanya Morris.
Yeah,
Mentioned
Wanya, I heard about him.
yeah, mentioned a few times as well as a potential trade candidate. What's the other dude's name that we were just talking about?
There's Brandon Parker.
Parker,
and
Parker. Yeah, he didn't look great last night. I know they had him slotted ahead on the depth chart, if I'm not mistaken, at first.
Well, if you notice too, last night they flopped him to the right side and they flopped Nelson to the left side. All preseason, Parker's been on the left, Jack's been on the right. So they flopped him last night.
Mm-hmm.
But just to say the least, man, it just didn't look good at all, man.
I thought it does look kind of bleak. I'm kind of curious if we're going to make that trade with Kansas City for Wanya.
Possibility. I've thrown out the name Joseph Notebloom. He plays for the Baltimore Ravens right now. He was part of that Rams Super Bowl winning team. He did come in the year that Andrew Whitworth got hurt, and he played pretty well. My thing is, durability is an issue with him at times. He does come up with these soft tissue injuries, and he had a couple season-ending injuries. But I know that's probably something you don't want to hear when you're going to go trade for somebody, all those deficiencies. But what we can make out of this is a guy that knows exactly what Zach wants within this offense. Him and Zach were together in that Super Bowl winning year for the Rams, and that's the year he filled in pretty good. And last PFF, I think he had a 70.6 run blocking grade. He has the same performance as McGary right now in the run blocking department. Not necessarily the pass block, but with those, we can work around those things. Couple chips, more play action on the left side, quick releases or screen plays to help mitigate the potential rush of a would-be pass rusher. But that's another name to keep an eye out for.
I don't even know how we value these type of trades. It typically does seem like if you're getting a veteran player a lot of the times, and if it's a known name, like someone who was good, even if they're in their prime, it's only going to be like a second rounder sometimes. I mean, unless they're like really young in their prime. Like Julio, when he was leaving, we were able to get a second rounder for him. That was pretty high because he didn't actually do a whole lot after that. But typically, even someone that's been a household name, it'll be usually like a fourth or a fifth rounder. What do you think it would be for a veteran who isn't just necessarily considered the best of his position?
When you look at how active the trade market has been this past week, the one thing that's been consistent has been 6th and 7th rounders. So, for a guy that's been in the league for that long, and you're trying to poach a veteran like that, then that's probably what it would take. Probably a 6th, a 7th, or combinations of 2 7s or something to that effect. When you mentioned, age, right? There's really, I don't think teams are going to give up any of their premium tackles at either position, left or right, or just predominantly right. So, that probably we can scratch off unless, Atlanta gets like really into a desperation mode where Jack Conklin could be a name that they look at from the Cleveland Browns. Jack Conklin's been, a perennial Pro Bowler, has been in the league 10 plus years. And if they want to keep, again, the continuity on that offensive line with it not missing a beat, then that's a guy that you can potentially go out and try and grab. I think that Cleveland right now has some serviceable tackles at the moment. DeJuan Jones, I know, young kid drafted out of Ohio. I don't know where he fits into their plans, but he's a massive framed guy that I know that Cleveland was very excited about him during the draft process. I think it was last year. So where does he fit into the future now, where they may be able to say, okay, you know what, Jack, this team may not be as good as you envisioned this year. We'll give you first priority, first say on where you want to go. And if Atlanta does come calling, needing a guy like him, This is a guy that is in that heavy run scheme that is Cleveland with Kevin Stefanski, Zach Robinson. All of these guys have been all under the same umbrella in the run of scheme of things. So he understands what it would take, to run and just perform in that Atlanta scheme right now. But Jack Conklin to get him, that would probably be a day two pick, a third round pick. Would Atlanta part ways with that? Maybe if they're that desperate. I would if I was the organization. But when we talk about veterans, I think a 6 or a 7 will probably get that deal done for like a Joseph Notebloom or even a Wanya Morris.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be against like a 5th or 6th or whatever for some of these guys to get a veteran presence. I don't feel like anybody's going to cut anybody that's going to be good enough to be, you know what I mean, be a starter on our team. I guess it's all going to depend on how long McGary stays out for, and the MRI being read yet.
Yeah, the rumor is that it's a patella tendon injury, right? And it's a dislocation of the patella tendon. And if you look it up, that's usually a 6 to 8 week recovery time, for an injury as such, right? But we don't know really what the extent is. If it is that, then you can pencil McGary coming back after the bye at some point. And as we all know, we got an early bye this week after week 4. We have a week 5 bye. He might be ready for that Buffalo game or the game after, which would be okay, pretty good. We're still in the beginning stages of the season, just before we get into the thick of things in November and December. So that would be a good, stretch to get him back. Little bits and pieces have come out, like last night, Brahim did touch that he is going to miss significant time, but did not reveal what the injury was. So, when you think of those two things, you can possibly think, is it a small tear? Is it something like, it could be a tear of some sort, but we just don't know.
What would you rather see the Falcons specifically do?
I would specifically like for them to go and get, a high profile, or I think that's the word, a high profile right tackle. I think a lot hangs on the balance of what this offense can be this year. And there's a lot of promise. There's way too many weapons in place right now. This offense is ready to hum, and we can't allow an injury like this to derail the plans that we have going in for 25. You might have to overpay, but for the sake of this season and this fan base, I would definitely treat them to that. You thought that trading back up to get James Pierce Jr., which was a necessity for this ball club, we're going to do the same thing on the offensive, because again, we don't know the extent of McGary's injury, and by some stroke of imagination, all of a sudden we hear that he's out for the season. Then you bringing in a marquee player kind of relieves the tension of what this offense can look like, based off the move that you make. You might have to try and overcompensate, overpay for a player, to a team that may say, no, we want to hold on to him, but we're listening. But hey, if Atlanta can come in with, a future second or a future third to get the deal down, to get the deal done, then that's just what they have to do. And when you look at it right now, Nelson, Parker, Noah Wilkerson really are guys that are world beaters. You can say, oh, no, we'll be good. I'll say it, man. I think this offense will take a step backwards if we don't replace McGary with talent.
I don't think that a second or a third is too steep for that at all. I don't necessarily think that's steep. I mean, we've seen. I mean, we definitely seen first round guys be bust, but a lot of times those are the ones that a lot of guys usually hit on. At least they're not complete busts. They wind up giving you some starting a lot of the times. A lot of times you get these second round picks that you're not too sure about, and that can go a lot of different ways. There's been a lot of great results with second round picks, and sometimes second round picks can take some time. Rook and Troy Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's been a couple of other defensive tackles. I feel like there was another guy before that we got in the second a few years ago, and he just didn't pan out as a defensive tackle.
Yeah. I think the name that you're probably thinking is Marlon Davison out of Auburn. He was the last second round pick before Rook, I'm sorry, that we drafted in the second round. That was under the Dan Quinn era. And yeah, he didn't pan out one bit. Yeah, that was a train wreck right there, man.
Yeah, man. That's exactly who I was talking about. But yeah, I think it's easy with these second round picks to like whiff on them. So if you can get a definite bona fide guy with that, I would definitely do it. I guess it would have to be one of those teams that doesn't feel like they have really a shot, or they feel like it's time to hit the rebuild button. Any maybe one or two changes that you think might be happening, like in terms of starters? I specifically definitely feel like Bowman's going to take over that safety. I mean that nickel position, and I feel like Xavier Watts is all but pretty much going to take over that second safety position as well too.
Yeah, so some surprises for me that would be, anytime Raheem mentions or talks in light about a player, is because I feel they have bigger plans for him. What do I mean by this, right? Natrone Brooks, has been he's been great for the Falcons in training camp. He's had some good training camps. He had some great preseason games. Even last year was the same deal. Now this year he's been more of the playmaker on the defense for the Falcons. I would not be shocked if going to start the season, it's a combination of Billy Bowman and Natrone Brooks at that nickel, and Natrone actually starts for the Falcons. He's been the playmaker. He's been around the ball. He's great in run defense. He's not afraid to, drop down and stick his nose where it doesn't belong. And that's the physicality you want, right? Before it was D. Alford, and I don't know if D. Alford sticks around on this ball club much longer after last night's performance. But there's liabilities with D. Alford because of his size, his size, his height, and his makeup and stuff like that. He gets washed in certain assignments. But Natrone gives you more physicality. Billy Bowman gives you all the physicality. So it's going to be a toss-up between them two. Some other things that might shock. Morgan Fox, I don't think is a lot to make this 53-man roster. And now Morgan Fox was one of our free agent acquisitions this past year. He signed a 2-year deal with Atlanta, but he hasn't done anything spectacular in preseason. I mean, if memory serves correct, he's only showed up on the stat line maybe once, and that was in the game versus the Detroit Lions. But otherwise, it hasn't been all too inspiring. I feel like Taquan Graham outplayed him, but Taquan Graham unfortunately hasn't played because he has a calf injury. Another guy for me, J.D. Bertan. I don't think he makes the roster neither. I feel like he's our version of Nate Landman this year. And what do I mean? Ooh. I think that where teams are figuring out to attack is throwing in that linebacker space, and he's slow to react, and he's slow to recognize. This is a young man that has been derailed, so to say, with head injury, head trauma. I don't know if these injuries are catching up to him, but I don't know. I don't think I'm 100 with him making the roster. One guy that I feel deserves to make the roster ahead of him, believe it or not, is D'Angelo Malone. I think D'Angelo Malone's play at inside linebacker, making the switch from edge to inside linebacker, is something to keep an eye on too, because there is a thin sense at that depth in the linebacker spot. Of course, we know it's Divine Diablo, Caden Ellis, but what do we have behind those two guys? Not much. Troy Anderson, are we really going to trust in his ability to stay healthy? I don't think that we can. He's on the PUP list. So we don't know what his status is going to be to start the season. D'Angelo has, he's shown flashes, and not of dominance or anything like that, but of competent linebacker play. And one thing that he has is great agility, great athleticism, and sideline to sideline speed. And that's the kind of linebackers that Jeff Ulbrich likes, speedy, big linebackers. He had it with Jermaine Sherwood and with the Jets. Also, C.J. Mosley. So, you can get a sense of what he likes in his style of linebacker. So, yeah, I would say right now, those are the candidates that should surprise, should not surprise some of the Falcon fan base.
That's interesting. I was going to say a guy who I've really liked at the linebacker position, watching them out there, who can do it all is Joshua.
Oh, Josh Woods.
Joshua Woods, yeah.
Man, he's popped. And listen, and that first game against Detroit, he was all over the field. Yeah, so that'd be another young man that could, make the roster. So I think Atlanta, when it's all said and done, they'll carry 4 inside linebackers, and it will be obviously the 2 starters. We don't know the status with Troy Anderson, but Josh Woods, D'Angelo Malone will probably make it until and get the spot until Troy Anderson gets back, and one of those 2 guys get relegated to the practice squad or something to that effect. Ronnie Harrison too played great last night, and that's a guy that we just signed not too long ago. He's one of those guys, a converted safety to linebacker, and if we know Jeff Ulbrich, he loves his converted safeties to linebackers. Sherwood with the Jets, Foye Olakun with the Falcons some years back when Jeff was here his first time around. So he likes that.
C.J. Henderson.
Yeah,
When you mentioned that you thought that whatchamacallit won't make the roster,
the Alfred.
he offered. I was wondering, like, do you think that C.J. Henderson might actually?
He had a good game last night against Dallas. Had a nice little PBU there. Looked fluid, looked good in coverage. So yeah, absolutely. Those are the things that you want, with the Falcons secondary. Jerry Gray recognizes that, and I think him and Raheem earlier this week mentioned, he has elite movement at that secondary spot with that cornerback spot. So, that's what they want. They want speed at the back end. So, C.J. Henderson, former, 9th overall pick some years back to Jacksonville, gets another shot, may cling on to this opportunity here, especially at a Falcon secondary that doesn't really have, a lot of great depth piece behind the cornerback start opposite A.J. Terrell and Mike Hughes. I would not be surprised if he makes the roster ahead of a D. Alford or even a Clark Phillips, who we haven't seen all preseason also.
I feel like Clark Phillips ain't gonna make the roster because he didn't play special teams at all either.
No, yeah. So there's really, unfortunately, there's really no value to what he has for the Falcons. He's strictly a slot guy, or he can step in on the outside when you need him. I just don't think the coaching staff has recognized or played to his strength or utilized him the best way that they possibly can. Coming out of Utah, the kid, I felt like he had some great ball skills, and I just don't understand why we haven't been able to capitalize on that. In short playing time last year, he did record interceptions and things like that. But then you also get the games where he was exclusively picked on and had higher passer ratings against him when targeted. So it's an unfortunate situation for Clark Phillips. There was high hopes for him in the beginning, but now those things have kind of fallen by the wayside for the people that we've brought in.
For sure, man. All right, bro. Well, man, I appreciate your time, bro. What all you got going on? Anything new coming up anytime soon?
No, just our weekly episodes. Wednesdays at 9, reporting eligible. Myself and Bro Talk. We try to hold it down and deliver the best content we possibly can. But yeah, for those that like the show, want to tune in, we'll be live this Wednesday, reacting to the roster cuts, and any news that comes out within the rest of this weekend, leading into the new week for the Falcons.
For sure.
All right, guys, that's our show for today. Like I said, stay tuned. The next episode will be about Falcons injuries and how long we think Kaleb McGary could potentially be out. Falcons Bird Bath, C-Mo to C Mitchell. Check it out, baby.